My name is Joanne Geer. Welcome, everyone. I'm the Executive Director for the Westchester Biotech Project, and welcome to our virtual roundtable on translating data science. Today, we're going to look at various different aspects of addressing interoperability. We will hear some presenters first, which will take, kind of 40 minutes maybe total, and then we will have a roundtable discussion. You can feel free to enter questions and comments in the chat room on the side there, and we will integrate those into the ongoing discussion. I want to introduce my partner and co-founder, Michael Welling. Michael?
Thank you very much, Joanne. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are certainly to have another sort of insightful and engaging conversation around a really interesting topic. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, just some quick background on the Westchester Biotech Project. We are a 1.5-year-old organization that required about 5 years of preparation for our launch. And our sort of mission and goal is to bring together researchers, data scientists, engineers, and those who support and engage with them for the purpose of flushing out ideas, addressing potential opportunities to solve problems, and really just furthering collaboration in this world with which we play. I think today's agenda really speaks to the true spirit of this borderless initiative that we have built here. And as far as that today represents our international reach, it represents our interdisciplinary reach, and as well as our topic of interoperability. And I think that you'll see today, as we flesh out these ideas, more is to come. And today is actually a great example just of an idea that came out from one of our previous sessions. And so we will encourage you, and everyone will have a chance to share their thoughts and ideas and even suggestions for further conversation. For those who are local, and certainly our international friends are welcome, we're just not footing the bill for travel, but next Tuesday, we are having a holiday get-together in White Plains from 5 to 7:30. We welcome everyone to join us. First drinks on us, and certainly we hope you can join us. Of course, we want you to stay in touch with us through our website, social media platforms, and other areas. And one of the things that we encourage you to do is, when you have an idea, when you have a thought, when you have just an inkling of an idea that might need to be flushed out to determine if it's a thought, please share that with us. And it's one of the roles that we love playing, is hearing your thoughts and ideas. And as you'll even see today from our panel, putting together pieces to the puzzle to help, again, flush out many of those ideas. Next slide, Joanne. For those who are not aware of some of our reach and areas in which we have initiatives and activities, this slide here demonstrates some of our core areas from our flagship Innovation and Research Symposium that we hold each year, our Rare Disease Symposium, which even this week I had people talking to me about how powerful that was. Our tauopathy colloquium with our partners and friends over at Burke Neurological Institute, our My First Laboratory initiative, really getting to the core of helping those early scientists remain scientists and stay at the bench and doing whatever we can to support their efforts in research. Our consortium on translational research in the microbiome is something that is, I think we have an upcoming webinar on that topic, and that's something I encourage everyone to jump in on. And it's really starting to, its reach is starting to know no bounds. And then I'm proud to announce, and this is sort of our first official public announcement, that we have officially signed an MOU to launch Westchester Biotech Project Europe in our sister city over in Nice, France. And Philippe Salfati, who some of you may know from some of our previous events, is heading that up. And we've got some really exciting opportunities there for 2019. And our goal, of course, is to host an event in France during the summer months. And Philippe promises to provide all the cheese and wine that we need there. And while that just represents sort of our core initiatives, we have many, many others. And so I encourage everyone to poke around the website, see where you might like to get involved. We never want to ask more of you than we want to give back to you. So this is not something you're signing up on a volunteer basis, but more somewhere where you'd like to contribute your skills and interests and hopefully get the same back in return. And of course, all this would not be possible without all of our community partners, alliance partners, and participants. Certainly, we're at a point now where they're too numerous to name them all. But of course, the Westchester County Association, Westchester County Government, Blakely Platt Schmidt, Purchase College, Iona College, Fordham University, Skanska, on and on. These are all tremendous partners, and we encourage all of you to not only support our partners who support us, but if you have other suggestions, ideas, or if your own organization might like to explore the value in being on this screen and joining the ranks, we obviously welcome that conversation as well. So before I hand this over, I wanted to just mention again, today's panel, which I want to thank all of our panelists and participants for joining us today, really represents what is at the core of what we are trying to do. And that is engage with smart people, engage with people who want to give back, and figure out areas with which there are topics and areas of value where we can explore. And today really is a prime example of that. And I know that you are all as excited as I am to get started. First, I want to turn the program over to our co-chairs of our Translating Data Science Roundtable. First, I want to introduce Paul Savage, who is the Senior Clinical Lecturer in Healthcare Management at Iona College right here in Westchester County, and a man of many talents and skills, and we are very fortunate to have him contribute to our efforts. So Paul, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, and it is a pleasure to be here with you. And I want to thank everyone who is joining us today. These discussions about big data is certainly very valuable. And I just wanted to emphasize, or at least introduce myself here for a moment. In addition to being a full-time faculty at Iona College, I also work very closely and do teaching at several other universities. These include Hofstra University, as well as Mount Sinai Medical School, New York Medical College, and I do research also with representatives from Pace University. This is in the context, again, of very big data, where I happen to be sitting on 200 million patient records. This has been something I've been working on for many, many years. And it's fascinating to see the growth that is occurring before us right now as the state of New York is going into their all claims database environment, in which we'll be looking at 1.2 billion patient records on an annual basis. These are phenomenal opportunities for us to mine the data and understand better of what's happening in the population before us. So in this respect, as we move forward, I'd like to introduce Bain Cardy as my co-chair. Antonio, if you would take it on.
Thank you, Paul. So as Paul mentioned, my name is Antonio Biancardi. I have just a little bit about me. I have a 20-year history of building enterprise project management software for pharmaceutical R&D. And that's kind of led me to developing a passion for accelerating business outcomes in life sciences. I found it was really very easy for me to get up every morning and go to work, knowing that what I was doing was helping companies solve big human problems like blindness. And that led me to seek other ways to contribute, which, serendipity actually brought me to meeting Joanne Geer, and that led me to joining the board of the Westchester Biotech Project a few years ago. So I'm very proud of the work that we're doing here, and I'm really happy to be able to contribute in whatever small way I can. Just to give you a little bit of a background on the Translating Data Science Roundtable that we're part of here. The mission of this roundtable really is to bridge the gap between technology and business users. That's the one thing that I noted was the biggest problem in developing tools for people to use in order to to further the life sciences and healthcare in general. The biggest problem that I noticed over the years that was just regularly there, thorn in my side, was the disconnect between the people using technology and the people developing technology, which is sort of the basis for the forming of this roundtable. And what we're really looking to do is really to bridge that gap between technology and business users by bringing together brilliant minds so that we could identify, discuss, define, and solve the big problems that are facing healthcare today. And as Paul mentioned, there is a tremendous opportunity in the data that we're seeing come online for us to not only solve problems that we didn't think were possible, just a couple of years ago, but also to kind of go back through time and look through our history and mine, those nuggets of gold that are in that data to possibly discover new uses for things that we're already using. It's an amazing initiative. I'm very happy to be a part of it. Thank you all for joining us here. And at this moment, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. And I must say, we are really excited to present to you a really very accomplished panel of speakers. And to start it all off, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Jabe Wilson. Jabe is the Consulting Director of Text and Data Analytics at Reed ElSevier. So Jabe, please take it away.
Thanks, Antonio. And thank you, Joanne, for the invitation to speak to you guys today. Very much appreciate that. As you'll see, as I present, Joanne has taken part in our Datathon competition, and the connection there is from Cures Within Reach, one of your partner organizations, who's also instrumental in the Datathon that I'll be talking about. So I want to talk a little bit about the subject of the roundtable, obviously, translating data science, addressing interoperability, and do so from the context of the Datathon we're running, which is for drug repurposing for rare diseases, and it's based on our data science platform, which we've recently launched, called Intellect. So I'm going to quickly run through some slides that I've presented at some conferences recently to give you some insights to the work we're doing. So I start off by talking about the moonshots, the Obama-Biden cancer moonshot. And just I really like this quote from Harvard, putting this into context, that actually a moonshot is a bit misguided in the sense of one trajectory and one objective. When we're looking at cancer and other diseases, actually, you're really talking about multiple, shall we say, objectives in terms of personalized medicine and the targets that you're trying to address for a particular disease. And my focus with data science and bringing that to drug discovery is that, there's many claims that artificial intelligence and data science can really help improve the performance of drug discovery, and that's something which at ElSevier we're trying to support through our work. So just to give an example of the kind of work which we're doing within ElSevier, we've worked with a charity in the UK called Find a Cure on a rare disease called congenital hyperinsulinism, and we're focusing on drug repurposing. Really, one of the reasons to do that is there's an opportunity to have fast results. And actually, Find a Cure put us in contact with the Cures Within Reach organization, which is kind of how this kind of connection got started. So I'll very quickly talk about the use of smart content for artificial intelligence and the Datathon which we're working on. So I presented and launched the Datathon in Boston back in October, and we're working with Cures Within Reach and Mission Cure and a pre-competitive pharma organization called Pistoia Alliance. I won't talk too much about the partners here. It's something you can kind of follow up on. I'm conscious of time. but we're working on chronic pancreatitis as the disease of interest. So, as I said, we're using our data science platform, and I'll talk very quickly about that and how it relates to bringing together interoperable data. So we have 3 pillars for this platform: the ingest, to bring the content in; the connect, which is about semantic data, bringing all of that data together in a graph and serving that up to AI systems. So very quickly, ElSevier, we spend a lot of time curating data, and this is really our focus. We develop a lot of database products, and we're bringing them all together within one platform. So I won't spend too much time on the different stages here, but we have a number of pathways to integrate information, and in this case, this is for adverse drug reactions, to bring this together in a semantic graph. So just very quickly, I'll run through what we did with Pfizer on congenital hyperinsulinism, starting off with the disease pathway. And basically, starting with the disease pathway, we identify the targets associated with that. Using the data that we've put together, we then look at the compounds that bind to those targets, and then we rank them based on their bioactivity, which we've curated, and then filter them based on their promiscuousness as targets. This basically came with some recommendations to Pfizer, and this is a great example of how to get value out of integrating data in one connected graph. So with the datathon, what we're doing is we're making data available to a bunch of data scientists on target disease and implication, on substances that bind to those targets and their bioactivity. And then there's the possibility to then to run machine learning on that. So to create fingerprints, in this case, looking at chemical structures, so INCHI codes, and create vectors out of that, and then a bunch of protein data and the protein sequences. Those can be created into vectors, and you can run your machine learning model on that. So our focus is, as I say, bringing this data together using our curation capabilities into this platform. And right now we're running this datathon that Joanne has been dialing into. And part of the purpose of this discussion today, the presentation, is to make you aware of the work we're doing, but also to see if any of you are interested in taking part in the datathon. There's only a month left of it, but I'd be very happy to welcome you guys to the family and to take part in the datathon. So this is something we're going to present the outcomes of the datathon in London, the spring meeting of the Pasteur Alliance, and I'm sure again in the Boston meeting for the Pasteur Alliance in the autumn and fall 2019. So this is the URL that you can access, and these slides will be shared following the call today. I'm very happy to answer people's questions and interact following the session. So I think I'm just within the 8 minutes allocated to me. So thank you very much again, Joanne and Antonio, and I look forward to the discussion to follow.
Thank you very much, Jabe. Next, I'd like to introduce Angela Radcliffe. Angela is a General Manager of Clinical Trial Solutions at PulsePoint. Angela, please take it away.
Angela might be on mute.
Love that picture.
Hi, this is Joanne. It looks like things should be okay at this end. I'm going to make a suggestion. Angela, we may need to just ask you to log in again I'll give it one more shot. Yeah. Okay, so I think why don't we go ahead and invite Hareesh to present, and then we'll get Angela back in, and I'm sure everything will work out just fine.
Okay. I'll
here.
allow me to introduce Hareesh, if I may.
Go ahead.
So
Yeah.
next up, I'd like to introduce Hareesh Chandrupatla. He's the Chief Data Scientist at Anjin Analytics. Hareesh, please take it away.
Hi, my name is Hareesh Chandrupatla. I'm founder and Chief Data Scientist at Anjin Analytics, or Advanced Analytics consulting company, especially focused on healthcare and life science. Just want to thank everybody for this opportunity to present. So just going to present a few short slides about a little bit about what we do, and then a use case that reflects how we're translating data science and where HIPAA and interoperability issues come into play. So just at a high level, our companies focus on a few different things. So various use cases for healthcare and life science. We do work in population health, clinical decision support, personalized medicine, as well as bioinformatics. The type of companies that we work with in the healthcare and life science space are digital health software companies of all sizes, especially startups, providers, payers, and then pharma, biotech, as well as pharmacy. So any company that's touching any kind of patient data. We're working with a variety of technologies. These are just some examples in terms of coding. We work with Python, R, a lot of the big data tools from Postgres into Spark, a lot of the machine learning toolkits or so frameworks that are coming out these days, like TensorFlow, Scikit. We're adopting those and using those for our client projects. And we're, in terms of methods, we're diving right into machine learning, AI, deep learning as core methods that we're trying to apply for our clients. And in terms of services, this can include data science, data engineering, application development, and as well as product management. Just a quick comment on, on data science. This is, I think, an important part of how do we translate this. People are talking about data science all over the place. I just wanted to comment on, what's the process, we're looking at when we're engaging in a project. So there's a process called CRISP-DM, which stands for Cross Industry Standard Process for Data Mining. Bit of a mouthful, but basically this is outlining the steps that we try to follow in a data science project. So the initial step is business understanding. So talking to the project owner or the client, understanding their business, so that we can then translate that into a data and technical understanding to come up with some requirements on how we're going to engage on the project from a technical standpoint. From there, we have to get access to data, so we have to prepare data so that we can analyze it. And then from there, we can analyze and develop our models. And then once we develop results, we'll need to evaluate those results. And once we come up with results that we're happy with, we can deploy that. And that deployment can be reporting charts to implementing an algorithm into a production product or software platform. So this may be a little bit hard to see. I may have to zoom in if you want to read some of the details, but really just trying to highlight an entire workflow for a platform that we worked with one company, highlighting the entire data flow. So on the left side is our inputs, including the applications. So we had web and mobile applications, which were inputting data, and we had integrations with EHRs as well as what I call paper health records. So we were actually taking paper health records, scanning them, and then inputting into the system. And then the second column are various inputs that could be flat files, HL7 FHIR, which are healthcare standards, to images and other relational databases. And then in the main section is just the whole. This is once data comes into our environment. We're integrating through the data transport from APIs, various protocols, SFTP, HTTPS, or just various ways that we're connecting to various data sources. We then have to process that data, creating data engineering workflows, and then we may enrich that with that data with additional algorithms, creating what we call an operational data store in green. And that's the data that we can use for our analytics. So this can be for reporting and analysis. This could be reporting back to our application interface, or this data might be exported into just into various formats. And so we have this operational data store. Below that, we have a machine learning repository. And again, that's where we're going to implement our machine learning models. Where some of those models are used to de-identify data. That's where we're applying predictive analytics, and also might be applying imaging algorithms as well. And again, on the right side are our outputs. So, we might be providing this data back by API, FTP, as well as ODP-C connections. And again, these are presenting back to our mobile and web apps, and then we might be integrating with other third parties that are taking the data that we generated, and they're connecting in by various APIs. So just wanted to highlight a use case. So that entire workflow we developed, I think it kind of was a standard we use with a lot of platforms that we're trying to develop, but we were using it for wound care. A company that's focused on wound care, they were developing a solution for wound care clinical decision support. So, the case here was we wanted to provide doctors with a tool to enhance their clinical assessment and support their diagnosis. We had patient data for about 5,000 patients, over 30,000 visits, and we also had 20,000 images of patients, or of wounds. And we applied a variety of algorithms. So we were applying supervised methods, including random forest, linear regression, and then also deep learning using convolutional neural networks for image segmentation. And the result of this is we developed a web and mobile platform for clinical decision support and patient management. So the resulting feature we created from our algorithms included time to heal. So based on our analysis, we were able to provide the physician with an estimate of how long it'll take for the patient to heal from a wound that they were analyzing. We also created a tool for identifying similar patients. So given a patient's condition, we look at the rest of the patient population and provide the physician with similar patients so that they can sort of look at the histories of other patients and try to identify treatment paths. And then with the wound, or with the wound images, our goal was to predict the perimeter and area of the wound. So on the right side with the image, we see an outline of the wound, and that's coming from a prediction developed from our algorithm. And so just my comment here on the kind of HIPAA and interoperability issues. So we were provided with 20,000 images. Most of them are wounds, but some of them actually had patient just had their face, or or in general, we don't know how the image is being taken. It could have someone's face in addition to their wound, and then it also had identifiers like labels with their name and date of birth. So we had to, in addition to trying to develop this algorithms for identifying them, and we also had to figure out how to mask the face and mask these identifiers. So those are additional algorithms we had to implement in order to account for this HIPAA and security issue. And then in our clinical data in general, we had to also figure out how to de-identify clinical data, especially in consideration for external partners we might share this data with. And on the interoperability piece, we were certainly connecting into EHRs was a big piece of this, and we were trying to. So a lot of the data we were initially provided were one-off data dumps. So there was no real interoperability, but just the people sharing, our partners sharing data files. And then the last piece, and I think one of the critical parts of interoperability that is the negotiation for access. So usually when in dealing with, once we get a project approved and we want to work with, we agree to work with a partner, there's a lot of legal and IT overhead, working out contracts, DUAs, data use agreements, on the legal side. And then the IT side, they're usually asking us for basically a checklist regarding our how we're handling HIPAA in our platform. And so sometimes this can just take a long time, so it could just be a time issue. But other issues I've encountered have been using these regulatory issues to really just say no, instead of saying no up front, but really just saying no after a long, drawn-out process. Well, that's it. That's it for me. Glad to address any questions.
I chuckled with that, Hareesh. Thank you. This is Joanne again. Hi, Angela. Let's give this a try. I'm going to send you a presenter notice.
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. Wonderful.
Okay, that's a good thing.
Yeah. That was easy to solve.
It was easy to solve. Go out, come back in, right?
Unplug it, right?
Exactly. My husband used to be in IT and always said, replace user. That's really the solve for almost.
Let's let Antonio introduce you, okay? I'm gonna get out of the picture here.
And Angela, I need to just acknowledge you because I was watching your screen as you're running through troubleshooting, and I think you hit all the right marks. Really, very impressed with your mouse skills there.
I've used every platform for WebEx, but it's never smooth, is it?
It never is. Actually, once I saw that somebody had a problem, I thought, okay, good, we got the one problem out of the way. Now we can have a smooth meeting from here on out.
Right.
So once again, I'd like to introduce Angela Radcliffe. She is the General Manager of Clinical Trial Solutions at PulsePoint. Please take it away, Angela.
Hello. So really happy to be here and have enjoyed the two presentations prior to this. I'll be coming at this from a slightly different direction. I've been in the industry just north of 25 years or so now in life sciences, mostly around the patient engagement space, but specific to sort of data. And as I've watched us evolve over the years, there's so much opportunity with data and data science to go where I think we need to go, which is trials filled on day one, right? Where we're not waiting 5 and 6 and 7 years to fill trials and in getting these perfect patients recruited in and using machine learning and data science. But I think that we have some real challenges, and I'm glad we're talking about interoperability today, because from the clinical trial lens, this is a real tangible problem, and I believe that in traditional sort of phase 2 through post-marketing studies, we really are a little bit behind in our use, and a big piece of that is the fact that we have significant numbers of interoperable systems within the clinical research enterprise. So I think the statistic is that on average, a typical CRO uses 32 to 40 different systems during clinical trial conduct. That is an insane number of systems, many of which do not play well together, and it puts incredible burden on the clinicians who are trying to operate a clinical trial, as well as really starts to cause problems with the way that we understand, trust, and can analyze that data during the trial and then moving forward. So, everything from referral portals to EMRs to, we like to put E in front of everything, ECOA, ECRF, ETMFs. But now we're starting to do things like bring wearable data in. And one of the things we were working on at PulsePoint is taking real world browsing behavior and social determinants of health data and trying to use the insights to help clinicians better understand the patients that they were researching in, so sort of that next leap into real world evidence. But we continue to have a big problem, and I always kind of crack up when I see this picture. In many cases, a researcher can go into a data set and they find the 12-foot man. And, we don't have many 12-foot men in real life. And really, it's just sort of anecdotally, a joke in industry around how poor quality the data is, especially when we're trying to take it from one system to another. And so you end up with a 12-foot man because someone did a calculation, from inches into the metric system, et cetera. And then suddenly it starts to make you question the veracity of the data. And so I think that we have a long way to go on the R&D side as far as getting to a place where we can make use of some of these great pilots and technologies and decision support tools and really jump into the world of real world evidence. And in many ways, real world evidence is sort of the future of clinical trials, right? So right now, we have systems that are designed to do trials on perfect patients. I need 100 men and women between the ages of 35 and 55 who are on this lipid lowering drug and not have this A1C level above a 7, and they could have, been jumping up and down 3 times a day, and they must live in Michigan. Like this is the type of clinical research we're still conducting. And then we turn around and have to conduct real world evidence studies to get payers to fund our drugs. And a big piece of that is real world looks very different. So to me, we've got a big problem here because we have a number of interoperable systems. We have a challenge with the veracity of the data that we have in those systems. And anything that we do to sort of improve upon that model has to not just be a Band-Aid, it has to be a fix to some of these sort of root cause issues. And so the topic that I sort of want to put out for discussion with this group is really the elephant in the room, as my slide so clearly says, and that is what is the future of data ownership and the veracity of data, and how do we work towards a future where we know what's going to be happening with data. So for those of you who are not familiar, one of the companies that I advise is called Humanity.co, and they are trying to essentially create a digital property for people's data. And it's caused sort of a big stir in the industry, especially, when I think of PulsePoint, for example, we have a large amount of data, and that data is an asset to our company, but that data isn't necessarily our data. And so the patient advocacy community in clinical trials has really come out big for owning their data and having some sort of ability to know that their data is their property and to verify the veracity of that data and to trace where that data goes. And so when I heard Michael throw out at the beginning that 1.2 billion records just in New York alone, this is what we're talking about. Data is essentially the lifeblood of everything that, those of us on the phone, it's sort of the lifeblood of the work that we do, and it's the key to unlocking so many advances in medicine. So I think we need to start thinking about that because I think it's a key to fixing some of the issues that we have with dirty data. And I think that the systems can start to play better together if the data is a little bit cleaner. So I think that's something on the horizon. But I wanted to put this slide up just sort of to say to all of you that, you know, what I'm finding in my work is this isn't a zero-sum game. For those of us who use data as assets, both to create, you know, our work, and also as the foundation of the products that we sell, we really have to start examining where the data comes from, and, you know, and how the data is used. Is it used to benefit me? Is it used to benefit others? Did I pay for a service and get something in return, et cetera? So I think this is just an interesting topic for us to explore as we discuss interoperability, because it's critical to sort of the future of the way that we do our work. No longer in clinical research can we stand for, you know, yet another system, because the systems are all handling the same data. So that's really the challenge that I'd sort of put out to the team today as we continue to discuss these use cases is okay, this is great. We need to get the systems more, you know, interoperable. But with that, how do we look at data, and where do we see the future of data? So with that, I'll pass it back over. Thanks for letting me share a perspective.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Angela. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker. So the next speaker is Kyle Gallatin, and he is a data scientist at Pfizer. Kyle, take it away.
Awesome, thank you very much. Just wait to be past the screen here. Cool.
I was asleep at the switch there. That was a great story, Angela. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Angela. That was awesome. Cool. So yeah, my name is Kyle Gallatin. I'm a data scientist at Pfizer, and I'm also going to be touching on interoperability today in data science and healthcare from the perspective of a lowly data sicentist at one of the larger pharmaceutical companies in the world. Definitely, you know, like anything you see here, please, you know, I'd love your input or critique on it. I do have to keep in mind that, you know, some people, no offense, may have been alive longer than I've been in the field, or maybe been in the field longer than I've been alive even. So, yeah, with that, I'll take it away. So I want to start by talking about just very, very high level, the data origin exchange within healthcare. This sort of touches on what Angela was just talking about, but essentially data is generated from a number of different sources within healthcare, you know, consumer data, IoT devices, you know, disparate doctors, disparate systems, and it goes into a number of different places after the fact. So this came from an excellent Medium article I read about fragmentation, and it really sort of stressed that a lot of this data is generated to satisfy a need, but not necessarily with analytics in mind. And as Angela just stated, like, even though this diagram doesn't show it, this could be, you know, as many as 30 different generating sources of data, all going to disparate places and really making the data inoperable. And this visual came from the exact same article and really illustrates perfectly what I would say confusion and interoperability. It's obviously a little bit tough to look at, but over here you can see, you know, the originators of the data, basically where the data is generated. A lot of the aggregators here, this is who we would probably primarily deal with at a company like Pfizer, IQVIA, Truven, basically companies that de-identify and bring the data together into a workable format. And then a lot of the sort of use cases and services or companies that basically buy this data and then provide services based on that data itself. So I would say Pfizer probably operates, you know, even over here, either working with the service providers or directly with these aggregators to perform our own analytics and things like that. So healthcare data is obviously growing at a pretty alarming rate. Here we see in 2013, you know, 153 exabytes, and the compound annual growth rate of 47% leads us to an estimated 2,314 exabytes by 2020. So obviously the general predictions are coming up that there's going to be a huge effort and spend in aggregating disparate sources where allowed. There are certain data sets, you know, you're not allowed to join currently to even attempt to identify patients or provide any additional data. And also an expansion in data methods and collection in places where the collection has traditionally suffered. I was speaking with someone who works at Memorial Sloan Kettering about the surgical rooms, and he was stating that traditionally that's been a place where data collection has been antiquated, but there are moves to sort of modernize that situation. So a lot of common practices from the analytics standpoint are things like data lakes, or basically integrated platforms or additional platforms and middlewares. Data lakes is essentially, store all kind of situation, as opposed to, say, a data warehouse where the structure of your data is defined. In a data lake, you kind of throw all of your stuff in there, structured and unstructured. Examples being HDFS or Amazon S3. And to actually make that workable, you have to include a lot of other services like machine learning and analytics, but it does bring disparate data together. Also, there's a lot of platforms and services, many of which we work with. Dataiku over here being a good example of sort of platforms that allow you to integrate data from a number of different sources and then perform, a centralized analytics on it, which has been greatly useful as well. I want to talk more specifically about what I work on a lot of, which is the unstructured information. So how do we kind of break into this wealth of dark and unstructured data? Unstructured data here being mostly, anything that isn't tabular in nature. So we have a lot of text data, a lot of image data, things like that we work with on a regular basis. So it's sort of anticipated that unstructured data is going to account for far more than the majority of data collected by any organization within the near future. A large portion of this unstructured data really remains untapped. Here, according to IBM, 80% of healthcare data is already unstructured, and that number sort of increases over time. And basically, in 2018, one problem to go along with this is that Alteryx estimated that data professionals spend 30% of the time finding the correct data, and another 20%. I should probably hide this. Oh man. Recreating or duplicating efforts and tools. So this is what I primarily deal with, is not only being someone who attempts to build tools to solve this, but also as a data scientist, someone who deals with these problems and often has to spend a lot of time finding the correct information. So what we've seen and what's benefited us greatly has been a growing need for targeted search. So data lakes are awesome, but require the proper tools to avoid becoming sort of data swamps, basically places where you dump things and aren't actually providing any real value. And they also also contain a ton of unstructured information. And simply finding a document or an answer to a question can become tedious. So open source platforms like Elasticsearch or basically just other searches, even though data science-wise they're not incredibly complex, the open source nature has made it, generated huge value in expediting workflow, saving large amounts of time and money at larger companies like Pfizer. In addition, advances in NLP and deep learning are about to provide huge value. So this is primarily where I've been working recently. The last 5 years have showed a huge increase in NLP capability, most notably word embeddings, and the newest versions of this, like Elmo and BERT, are stateful models, which means they learn word representation based on context. So words that appear in a different context, in a different sentence, will have a different vectorized representation. And these models are quite large, but they set record benchmarks on a lot of the sort of classic NLP tasks, like entity recognition, question answering, sentiment analysis, and text classification. So sort of the next step would be to bring these models in and sort of other techniques into this medical information. I know Amazon just released, their service, I think it was last week, to label doctor's notes, or I believe it was, like physician diagnosis codes or something like that. But essentially, how do we take all of these great advances in general NLP and bring them into more specific use cases in the medical field, where we have all of this dark data that has, yet to be untapped. And the last thing I want to talk about is sort of interoperability, not only in the data itself, but sort of in AI and machine learning. So new technology is really changing the way we think about and deploy AI. 90% of companies in 2018 cited the deployment of models to production quickly and reliably as a significant challenge. And especially within large companies, AI applications and a lot of services have been plagued by sort of one-off builds, essentially, building an application to serve a need, but not thinking about scalability or reusability when building that application, that model, or that service. So new technology has really been changing the way we think about and deploy AI. Specifically, Amazon SageMaker was released last year. Very quick way to get models into production, solving this problem. Docker and Kubernetes are going to be huge for 2019 data scientists in terms of compartmentalizing and making your models more reusable and scalable services. But a lot of cool stuff happening in the field, not just within modeling, but also with the technology and how we think about and deploy AI from a software engineering perspective. And that is it.
Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you,
Wow.
Kyle.
Antonio, am I jumping in here? Or you jumping in?
Oh, actually, no. Go ahead, please, Michael. Sorry.
Oh, no worries at all. I talk enough for everybody, so I have no problem holding back or jumping in. So first of all, thank you to the presenters, Jabe, Hareesh, Angela, Kyle. That is some, I think, fascinating stuff, and I could sit and listen to it for hours. And Kyle, I think one of your advantages is this whole field is so sort of evolving and young. Don't worry about how young you are. I think that you certainly demonstrate.
I don't think that's what he
your
meant,
ability
Michael.
to contribute.
I don't think that's what he meant. I don't think that's what he meant. That's all I'm going to say.
It was a little bit. It was a little bit.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I was telling him it's okay for him to hang out with us old people. That was my point there. So not to worry about it.
Thanks, guys.
So I want to spend a few minutes. I'm going to go around and have sort of everyone on the call introduce themselves and certainly share, a few comments or thoughts that you have here. Before I do that, just a few other things that I want to mention, and that is, so Angela's company, PulsePoint. Angela, again, thank you for joining us today, is a company that I am very familiar with, and they have been hosting a number of events and doing some really interesting collaborative activities. And I encourage everyone to sort of check those out and participate where you can. And again, thank you for joining us here. So let's do some quick introductions. I actually want to start with the caffeinated engine that helps run a lot of these things. Many of you have received probably endless emails from, but our own Chris Kinzel. Chris, you want to just hop on and say a quick hello?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, well, that's true. I have coffee with me right now. My name is Chris Kinzel. I'm the program coordinator here at the Westchester Biotech Project, and I'm a biochemist and geneticist, so this is far beyond anything that I am familiar with. It's fascinating, and I feel like we could have made each one of these presentations into kind of their own thing. So I'm looking forward to ideas that this group proposes and next steps and discussions, and I'll be there to help get it going and carry it along, and really appreciate it. Feel free to reach out, get involved. Thanks a bunch.
Excellent, and I agree. I think we could spin off, other subgroup conversations and presentations on each of the topics from today. Daniel Lee, are you there? Unmute yourself, say hello. Any comments?
Hey, this is Daniel Lee. Thanks for the talks. I'm a founder of a company called Chandrupatla. I'm a statistician. Helped make an open source software statistical language called STAN, and we're using that to apply to the clinical research space, trying to help companies decide which therapies to continue to chase. We're working sort of not on the big data side. We're looking at clinical trial data and trying to get efficacy out of smaller data sets, essentially personalized medicine and rare diseases.
Awesome. Well, I can already think of 3 or 4 places where we could leverage your experience and knowledge. So we appreciate you joining us and certainly encourage you to continue to engage. I want to just jump ahead to Jabe, if you're still on. I know you need to jump off soon. Any comments or follow-up that you'd like to share?
Hi, yeah. So again, a thank you, and yeah, apologies to everyone that I do need to drop off at the top of the hour. So I kind of wanted to say, if there are things which I miss following this, I'm very happy to follow up asynchronously and engage with you guys offline. So I'm sorry that I can't take part in the conversation that's going to follow. Thanks to the other presenters, I found those presentations fascinating, and yeah, I look forward to hearing how the sessions go afterwards. I mean, the one thing which I didn't mention that I think is a very interesting topic is FAIR data, the FAIR model for protocols, which I think can potentially lead us to some progress in terms of aggregating data for use in AI. But yeah, that's it. So thank you, everybody. And yeah, sorry, I'm going to have to drop off soon.
No worries. Thank you, Jabe, and we'll definitely be talking to you again soon.
Right.
Hareesh and Angela and Kyle, I'm going to circle back to you guys when we get through everyone else, just to give you all sort of the last chance for any follow-up conclusions or comments. Next person I'd like to introduce is a very good friend of mine, someone who has really turned me on to the whole data world. And Angela talked about data as an asset, and Jesse gave me some homework over the summer and reading the book Infonomics, which really opened my eyes to this whole world, and I recommend that read. But Jesse, you want to say hello and share some comments?
Absolutely, yeah. No, thank you, Michael. I appreciate the partnership and camaraderie. I think you've built a pretty impressive group of people here. I really just appreciated the presentations today. I think they covered a wide range of topics. Clearly, we have some really talented folks who are doing some pretty amazing work. I think, so my firm, Crew Street, is dedicated to bringing data science to firms no matter where they are on their continuum. I'm personally not a data scientist, but I work with them. I'm more of a business person. We are in the process of building a platform called the MyCDO platform. And the concept is that it's a guided self-service platform for data stewards, data citizens who aren't necessarily technically inclined. And the goal really is to empower data science, no matter who the player is in an organization, and really put predictive modeling, data discovery, all that to work. I think the topic of interoperability is such a great topic to continue to cover. I think it's not just in healthcare; it's in pretty much every industry that we're dealing with interoperability. I think finding unique and creative ways to scale solutions to build services for clients where we can spin up, where you can spin up a solution for a client quickly, so they can measure the effectiveness of the technology that might enable them to do more is one of the special things about where we are right now in this time in era. I mean, right now more than ever versus a decade ago, or even more recently, you can quickly scale up a solution and let somebody test out the hospital system, a clinical trial, whatever it is, test out some theories. And so I think Westchester Biotech Project is such a exciting organization because it helps to solve, or at least it helps to put the right kinds of people together to solve those big problems. So yeah, I appreciate you all and enjoy these calls for sure.
Thank you, Jesse. Glad to have you as part of the community here. Marjorie, hello. Do you want to say a few words, introduce yourself to the group?
Hi. This is Margie Wilkie. I'm out in California right now. My sister has lymphoma, so I'm helping. I think the couple of things that come to mind for me is that crossing fields is very important, and so taking all these different groups, so stepping up one notch and taking all these different groups that come and speak at the seminars and getting us all in one place and brainstorming and getting some startups going, I think would be wonderful. I've got startup in my blood. I grew up in Silicon Valley. And what else am I saying? Oh, this is the age-old problem. In simple terms, what we're looking at in a lot of these cases is file reformatting. This interoperability, same thing. This problem has been around from the beginning, and it's very important. And anything we can do that it just, even the ontologies that are underlying so much of this work don't speak to each other well. So I think this is wonderful. I think what you're doing is absolutely wonderful, and I think maybe having one conference where we get a little bit of all of these things in one place and see what mixes up would be great.
I appreciate you.
Great idea.
I appreciate you volunteering to chair that program, Margie.
Hey, as soon as we get
I was going to say
through the lymphoma,
Okay. Well, that's
our thoughts are with you.
Really.
Thank you.
And I was going to say we should start probably playing the "Where in the World is Marjorie" game before we host all these, as you seem to be calling in from some of the most interesting places around the country. So thank you again for joining us. Moving along alphabetically here, Scott, you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, my name is Scott Lett. I'm a data scientist working out of Colorado and enjoying the sunny weather right now. So until it gets colder.
Don't rub it in.
And I've been working off and on the last 15 or so years on machine learning models applied to biomedical decision making, anything from drug safety to drug discovery to diagnostics, and currently working on deep learning models applied to designing prosthetic body parts. And one of the things that I find really interesting in that time in the evolution of deep learning is the ability to take the unlabeled and unstructured data, of which we have much, much more than we have curated and structured and labeled data, and turning that into patterns that then accelerate or extracting value from those data sets that are labeled. And I noticed that a number of people that gave talks today mentioned that. But I'm also interested in the things that it doesn't yet address, and that is one of the things that data scientists are acutely aware in general outside biomedical applications is the risk of machine learning models reinforcing biases that already exist. And I wonder if any of the presenters today have any thoughts on things that are being done, whether that's still an issue or a thought of, and that idea of interoperability at the machine learning level over and above the interoperability at the software or data file format level is really quite interesting to me.
Interesting question. I don't know, does anyone have a comment on sort of reinforcing those theories?
That seems like a really
It's
juicy
okay if
topic.
not.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
All right. Well, I think we might have a topic for another webinar, just to address those. So thank you, Scott. Appreciate you joining us today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. 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 Appreciate it. Teresita, you want to say hello? Don't see you unmuting yourself. You do have to unmute. No, well, if you get unmuted and want to jump in, let me know. We're going to skip over to Trevor. Hi, Trevor.
Hi guys, how's everybody today?
Great.
So so I'm getting involved here. I've had a little bit of collaboration with you guys at Westchester, various things, but I'm involved in the Pistoia Alliance Datathon that's happening that Jabe had mentioned with ElSevier. So I'm kind of just, working to see what I can do. My background is chemical engineering and pharmaceutical engineering, so a little bit removed from the machine learning and AI space. But, this is an area that definitely needs further development, so I'm all in.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And I will say one of the things that Joanne and I have been doing is working with some of our partners in identifying some actual real world problems or challenges where perhaps we can sort of foster a collaborative effort to solve or address. And so, anyone who's interested in sort of being part of those conversations, certainly let us know. We welcome, obviously, any and all contributions. I'm going to come back to Teresita once more. Are you there? Do you want to say hello?
Yes, hello. This is Teresita. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi.
This was an excellent talk. It's my first time joining within your particular organization, so I confess to being somewhat of a neophyte regarding some of the topical areas. But I do come from a very long background on my undergraduate degree in chemistry biology, graduate work in chemical engineering, and a very long career with the IBM Corporation, where I worked on what at the time was coined expert database systems that later evolved into the early remnants of AI. So my question, and I apologize if everyone didn't see this, was I view AI through a lens of future markets, especially new businesses and those opportunities. So I was just curious how Westchester Biotech was kind of creating the space. And when I meant space, I mean the physical space for the possibility of these new opportunities to grow. Thank you.
No worries. It's a great question and something that we are continuing to explore and try and address, this idea of some physical space to bring people together and sort of share ideas and collaborate. I will tell you that Joanne and I have been asked to chair a working group for the Westchester County government, we hope designed to explore and put together a sort of blueprint for a physical space here in the county. For those of you who are local, you may have read about the North 60 project, and that's been in the news lately. And while I don't know if that is what is ultimately going to be the end game here, there certainly is a movement and a momentum behind the idea of Westchester needing some physical space. So we are working towards that, and I personally feel strongly it's needed to have a lot of that face-to-face and bring people together. So we will certainly keep you all posted and welcome sort of any other thoughts, suggestions, or recommendations on how to move that forward. Wade, you want to say hello? Yes.
Hi. Hello. So I'm
Sorry,
Wade
Paul,
Trappy.
do you want to jump in?
If I might, this is Paul Savage. Speaking just very, very briefly from the academic side, a number of universities are creating innovation centers with the specific purpose of trying to bring some of these ideas forward. New York Medical College has created an innovation center. Iona College has a center as well. And I believe Hofstra and Mount Sinai Medical Center are all considering developing innovation centers as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul. Wade, apologies. Let's hit reset and let's turn it over to Wade Trappy.
Okay, no worries. So I'm Wade Trappy. I'm a professor in electrical engineering at Rutgers University. So I work a lot on, I guess, what people now call data analytics and things. But historically, I would just comment that we've been, we, the technical community, have been studying data from statistical angles and so on for a long time. So one viewpoint I would just put forth is that everything old is just new again. I have been involved in Westchester in a variety of different ways, from being, I guess, an advisor on the science board to also just being involved in their cybersecurity initiative. So I just decided to attend to hear about some things I'm broadly interested in. I would make a quick comment regarding a question a few people back regarding machine learning and reinforcing bias. And in that regard, I would just say that we have these problems historically in data analysis. Statistics often will put out the term selection bias when you design experiments or when you collect data. Same sort of problem will happen. And broadly speaking, machine learning, we're gonna have to go through some of our I guess growth spurts and learning in order to work some of these things out. So there'll be some falls, but people will predict things incorrectly. But in the end, there will be a communal perspective that will lead to like best practices and stuff. It just takes time.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And Wade, we always appreciate your time and your contributions. I'm always guilty of recency bias. The best last thing that I heard is still the best next thing as well. So I think it's something that we're all taking into account. I want to circle back. We still have some time here. Hareesh, excuse me, Angela, we'll go alphabetical. Any follow-up comments or anything else you'd like to share?
No, I mean, I think this was a really interesting discussion. I would love to continue to sort of understand what people's thoughts and biases are around kind of around where we see data ownership going. I think that's a compelling topic, and I'd also love to hear people's thoughts around, as I think it was Wade who put into the comment section, like, as we get closer to personalized medicine, research, how are we going to start to conduct research differently? And that's sort of the $1 million question, but data is certainly the key to unlocking that, and machine learning, because we can be more prospective, and of course the human genome will help us a lot there too. So those are just some topics that are definitely on the top of my mind as we continue these discussions.
I love it. And the conversation I was actually having yesterday with someone, how data almost minimizes the need for certain type of labs, wet labs or other equipment, because you can use that to sort of get to some of the same ends. So great comment and suggestion. And again, thank you again for joining us. Hareesh.
Yes. Oh yeah, just a comment on bias in both the statistics as well as the populations that we look at. Yeah, just going back to the example I was talking about with wound care. So we had, first overall, when we're developing an algorithm or model, we have to look at it on a population by population. You look at each population as unique. So if I develop an algorithm with one population from one client, I can't exactly take that to the next client and expect it to work completely, because their population is gonna will have different a different set of people, different characteristics, and so we need to, while we can create like a framework with like an initial use case, we'll have to go to each population and retrain our model so that it fits and suits that population. So that's something that's really important to consider. One size does not fit all. The other is, so especially with our images, we're in trying to develop these algorithms, people are trying to talking about, is AI going to be discriminating? And so inherently, we actually have to account for this. Like with our imaging algorithms, they perform differently with dark skin and light skin. So for the development of this, we had to segment our population. So populations that had certain pigmentation, we had to separate and develop an algorithm separately from those with darker skin. So inherently, we had to create this bias so that we could actually get this algorithm to work. Now downstream, we could hopefully come up with a method that we could throw any population with any skin color and get that to work. But at least in the initial stage, we had to account for that, because there were essentially kind of two extremes that we had to account for, or more than two. But so I just wanted to bring that up. That was also part of, let's say, that process of development for that use case. And I think, yeah, it's something that should be discussed more, both from, hey, we do have to intentionally have bias so that we can have algorithms that work, but also we don't want our algorithms to have bias in a negative fashion, such as identifying, being able to discriminate on color or other features in a negative fashion. So just want to comment on
that. Fascinating. And again, that almost could be a topic. Go ahead.
Good. We're illustrating the problem and some of the ideas on how to solve it. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Yep. Really, really good. Kyle, do you want to sort of loop back in and share any further thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I just might, echo Angela's point a little bit. I primarily work, sort of, end of the cycle, where, I'm already getting de-identified patient data, sort of like the limit of what I can get. But what really is interesting to me would be things like data ownership and sort of the process at the beginning. With the rise of open source, everyone's kind of using the same algorithms, the same techniques, the same languages. So all the solutions are out there, but really, empowering the patient to, provide data ownership, and then sort of making sure that data is available in, a proper and functional way. could really power all of these advances in algorithms and technology that are being held back by data that's not open source, i.e. healthcare data that, belongs to patients or belongs to companies that sell it to other people.
Yep. So best practices and go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the reason it's a game changer is all of a sudden we go from this sort of de-identified, data sets to knowing precisely what the data is about and having sort of that adult relationship with consumers in a new way in healthcare. And I don't think there's any industry that it's more important that we have sort of that transparent adult relationship, because if I want to say, hey, Kyle, here's all of Angela's data, and I know it's my data and I want you to use it for research, you know exactly what you're getting and I know exactly what's happening to it. And I think some of the de-identified data that's floating around it's not clean, but because it's not identified, we don't know how clean it is. There could be duplicates in the data sets. There are any number of problems. So anyhow, obviously I could talk on that topic for days.
That's great. Hey, yeah, this is Chris. I just want to jump in real quick. So something that comes to my mind intuitively is, do you see kind of this topic of data ownership? And I think we're all aware that, public awareness is increasing. We're still in an infant stage, and this could actually be a threat, and data could become less accessible than it used to be. Anybody got an opinion on that?
I think it's a huge threat, and I think that's why we need to be leaders in this space, and really start to question how data comes to us for our use, and how we're interacting with it, because the backlash that could happen, and I sort of see that. A lot of us have been affected by GDPR and the new privacy rules and things have changed, but privacy is really sort of a smoke screen to stop us from worrying about property. The problem is the general public sees sort of the next big data breach and they say, give me all my data and I don't want anybody to use it for anything. And I think it's a significant risk. And so it's important for us to provide an alternative to that if we're to preserve the opportunity that we have to make good with all of this data. So, I think it's a real and present danger, Chris. Thanks for bringing it up.
Hi, this is Joanne. This is really wonderful, and I have bias circled 10 times in my notes, so we're going to definitely want to come back and explore that from all different sides. I just see that Paul Savage had put out a question earlier on, and that I think is sort of earlier on in the continuum, but I think it's a great question for us to think about, and maybe we invite someone in. His question is, are there needs for an independent IRB's participation in some of the data management and data mining represented today? I would imagine the answer is yes, but what do you guys think? Kyle?
It's Angela.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say sort of mixed feelings on my front. So I've sat on an IRB before, and I think IRBs have had such an important role in bringing, obviously a proper ethics oversight over the years. But in some ways, they've also been incredibly limiting. And so I think we're going to have to start to rethink certain things. So is there a place for IRB sort of input and oversight as we approach this? Absolutely. But at the same time, I've sort of seen when IRBs go wrong, when we've overstepped a little bit, because this is new ethical ground for us. The way that we're using data, the way that we're conducting research using data, it's really new ethical ground. And so I think a lot of people don't have an established point of view just yet. And it puts us in a little bit of dangerous water. So in some ways, that's a high call for IRB involvement, right? Because we need sort of an unbiased group of people to say this is what we should be doing. And on the other hand, we sort of need to be pioneers and change agents in how we ask IRBs to sort of be present and intervene, because these aren't solved ethical issues just yet with data. I'm sure Kyle has a perspective too.
I'm good for the moment.
She did a good job, didn't she?
Yes, I think that was concise enough.
Thank you. So I will just I'm going to say is thank you to everyone. This has been a really great conversation. We have some more minutes. I'm not trying to close things down, but I'm seeing some really interesting themes emerging. And for those of you who, or this is the first time you're being part of the call, each call unearths a theme that gets expressed in the following program, or at least it's happened that way so far. And we're also interested in knowing more about, what it is that y'all are involved with. We'll be doing virtual sessions certainly through the winter, and looking for an opportunity to do an in-person program, probably integrated. And actually, Margie, you were singing my song, and we're in the process of scheduling in March our Innovation in Research 3. And we will be asking each of our roundtables to contribute something to that program. So that's a moment that will certainly be bringing folks together from all perspectives. We can also think about doing an in-person program, a workshop of some sort. What I love about what we're doing is being able to use this platform, and we can really be international. We just last week signed the MOU for Westchester Biotech Project Europe. And so we'll be developing programs, or we have some speakers from centers there as well as here. So we'll be able to look at, GDPR and all kinds of important things that cross the Atlantic for now. So I think it'd be great to spend a few more minutes just. If this is okay with you, Michael, I think it feels like you got to everybody, but does anybody have a burning idea of something like, wow, this is the kind of people I would like to discuss something with? Are there any topics that you think that a brain trust like this could help you with personally or professionally? We could talk about decorating. That'd be fine too.
Okay. I will also say that should there be any cause for an introduction after this is over, please let us know, and we're happy to connect anyone with anyone that might be of value.
There was one thing that I wanted to add, just on hearing about trying to open some kind of physical space for development in this space. I think it definitely would be worthwhile to investigate building out some institutional partners for computational resources. I think the Datathon with ElSevier and Pistoia Alliance is a really good start, but definitely I would, try to approach companies like Amazon and IBM that have significant resources in the computing space for these kinds of projects, that you might be able to leverage as an institution. And then there was another kind of aspect I found it really interesting. Some other people brought up kind of data ownership and data security, those kind of things. What happens when people don't want to share data if they have control of it? Really interesting projects are happening kind of in India. They have a national ID system called Aadhaar. They use it to link, it's a unique identification number that they've used to link banking information, citizenship, and they're now getting to link that to medical data, medical records. And it's kind of been a plight after plight. There's data security issues written in the platform. So many things are wrong with it. There's been kind of talk in the medical industry about, what's going to happen when all of this data gets leaked.
That sounds like Paul might have it. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That sounds like Paul might have a comment on that.
That's fascinating.
So we definitely, I think going into the interaction of, HIPAA and research and privacy can be really important. There's someone who we did a program with, Antonio and I worked on years ago, called the Internet of Medical Things, which looked specifically at cybersecurity for medical devices and connected devices. And I won't curl your hair with all the things I learned that day, but it was pretty exciting. I'm in touch. Rebecca Harold is her name, and I've been in touch with her, and we're working on scheduling a time that she can participate, whether it's part of our roundtable or as a webinar or whatever, but we'll definitely have that kind of content on the boards. But thanks for bringing that up, Trevor. And I agree with you that so one of the each of these roundtables helps emerge themes that we can perhaps help address. And one of them, there's a range of them that are in the works now, and one of them is to look for a space where, not so much for very, very early stages startups, but to cultivate young companies when they're moving from, say, 5 to 50 employees. So they're becoming an enterprise and, have to have a lot of different, they may, be working virtually, but also potentially have lab space. Certainly lots of data companies are in this area. So I like it that you commented on that, Trevor. So we'll probably come back to you for conversation as that starts to gel. But we're in the early stages of feasibility for that. And as Michael said, the county government has invited us to be part of this process of sort of helping figure out what is needed. So watch this space. It's the kind of thing that could happen in a couple of years. It might not take forever. Well, Michael, it's rare that we're sort of finished before the time is up, but it's okay to let people go. This has been a really wonderful conversation.
Hey, I have a quick question. I apologize. This is Jesse. I over here for some reason I thought my phone was unmuted, but it wasn't. So I was wondering, do you have any plans to conduct any surveys to the group? I feel like this group, if we had an ongoing survey, even if it was just something simple like a 10-question survey based on a particular topic at hand from week to week, like one thing in particular that jumps out at me is solving big problems requires good questions to ask and good data sets. Having people submit their big questions to ask and at the same time recognize databases or data sources that would be useful for those. I think to me, that's one of the things that always jumps out in my mind is what are the nationally recognized databases? What are the specialty databases that would be useful for the purposes of solving big problems? And has anybody ever collected them and put them in one place? And with the amount of talent we have here, it just seems like there's at least an opportunity to generate some information on that.
I think there certainly are a lot of them, and I think that probably some of the NIH websites is going to give us a lot of resources there. I'm not against doing a survey, and thank you for volunteering to start to draft it, Jesse. That's very nice of you. But I think I feel like furthering these conversations so that together an idea emerges that excites this group. And then, potentially also, looking beyond. I mean, if we did a survey, it wouldn't just be for the people that have already been on the calls with us, but we would ask our whole community. But I do think that just the power of conversation starts to emerge, ways in which there's sort of a cross-fertilization, which is, to me, that's the exciting part. If we could evolve to a question that interests a good number of our folks, and to me, in my vast experience, that is a more effective way to move energy forward. Saying that to a bunch of data people, I know, but so a combination of those is a good thing, I think. But if you want to talk about that, Jesse, and start thinking about what would you want to ask and who would you want to ask and so on, we certainly can make that happen. We have platforms for it. Thank you.
I was going to let Paul and Antonio also have a last shot at a few words if they wanted to add anything here in our final minutes.
I guess I'll go first, Paul.
Sure.
I have to say, I mean, I'm really very happy with the brain trust that we've assembled here. I mean, we've covered so many great topics, and there's just been some really amazing insight provided. I'm excited about what we can actually do here together. So I'm really happy. I'm grateful for this. And I'd like to thank everybody for being involved. It's amazing, and I'm excited about what we could actually produce out of this group. So, Paul?
Thank you. And I too would like to thank and appreciate everyone's participation in all of this. I would want to spend just a moment making a comment that while we're talking about really huge subjects and technology and capabilities, as well as huge data, there are actually small incremental steps being achieved in a very, very near term. The question about patient identity. The state of New York is in the process right now of creating a master patient index for everyone across the entire state of New York. Traditionally, of course, we've had a master patient index in every individual hospital, which has been trying to generate the electronic medical record. It's easy to identify if you're within the same organization, but if a patient is going from hospital to hospital to hospital, they're all different. Different identifiers are used. So the state is in the process right now, and hopefully will be operational within the year, to have a master patient index across the entire country. Across the entire state. At the country level, the Sequoia project is also trying to build and identify ways of identifying patients, especially those that because of emergencies are displaced. The product of Katrina, the Sequoia project, has been trying to facilitate the idea of emergency workers being able to identify patients, assemble medical records from disparate sources all over the country in a single swipe. And again, the regulatory environment is a very important part of the equation that we're looking at, whether it's both state and federal. But also, I think the academics can play a role. And I very much look forward to working with all of you in the future. Again, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Paul. That's great. Paul and Antonio, we appreciate all your leadership and hard work in this area. Joanne, do you want to have any final words?
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely rest of your day, and we'll be back in touch with you pretty soon. Thank you, Michael. Good job.
Don't miss our government relations webinar next week, December 12th. Make sure to sign up for that as well. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.